For over 50 years, one aircraft defined what it meant to fly. The Boeing 747 carried heads of state, lowered the cost of crossing oceans, forced airports to rebuild, and turned international travel from a privilege into a possibility for millions. They called her the Queen of the Skies. But this airplane was never inevitable. It was born from a desperate gamble and an industry that had run out of room. The 1958 introduction of the Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 transformed global travel, cutting flight times in half and inviting a new class of travelers into the skies. Between 1958 and 1968, international passenger traffic surged by an average of 15% every year. This relentless growth quickly pushed the 140-seat Boeing 707 to its physical limits, threatening to choke busy international routes. Juan Trippe, the head of Pan American World Airways, realized that airlines were running out of sky. To bypass this capacity bottleneck, Trippe wanted a giant. He envisioned an aircraft carrying 400 passengers, nearly 3 times the size of existing jets. By spreading operating expenses across hundreds of additional seats, Trippe aimed to slash the cost per seat mile by 30%. This bold proposal put immense pressure on aircraft manufacturers to build a machine of unprecedented scale. Boeing accepted Trippe's dare, staking its corporate survival on an aircraft nearly 3 times the size of any jet then in service. To turn this massive gamble into a real flying machine, Boeing appointed Joe Sutter, a veteran engineer who suddenly inherited the responsibility of designing the world's largest airliner. Sutter assembled a team of 4,500 engineers. Working under a punishing schedule of just 29 months from concept to rollout, they had to invent a completely new class of aircraft. Sutter rejected a double-deck layout, choosing instead a wide-body, twin-aisle design powered by 4 massive engines. He moved the cockpit above the main deck, creating a raised flight deck that allowed cargo to be loaded directly through a nose door. By designing the aircraft with future freight use in mind, Sutter ensured the giant would remain viable even if passenger trends shifted. To lift this immense weight, Boeing relied on a revolutionary engine, the Pratt & Whitney JT9D. This high-bypass turbofan promised the massive thrust needed for transoceanic range, but its early development was plagued by compressor stalls and casing distortions. At the same time, engineers grappled with designing a pressurized fuselage and a complex 16-wheel landing gear system capable of supporting more than 700,000 pounds. No existing hangar could contain an aircraft of these dimensions. In 1967, Boeing cleared a heavily forested site near Painfield, Washington, to erect the Everett factory. Enclosing over 472 million cubic feet, it became the largest building by volume in the world. Before the first metal was even cut for the prototype, the 747 had already forced an entire global industry to scale up around it. On September 30th, 1968, the first finished Boeing 747 rolled out of the Everett factory. 5 months later, on February 9th, 1969, test pilots Jack Waddell and Brian Weigel lined up on the runway and lifted the giant into the air for its maiden flight. By January 22nd, 1970, the experimental test aircraft became a commercial reality as Pan American operated the first scheduled 747 flight from New York to London. Passengers stepping aboard immediately realized they were entering a new era. The cabin was wider than any standard single-aisle jet, offering a sense of openness and vertical space that completely changed the psychological feel of long-haul travel. Instead of feeling confined, travelers enjoyed room to stretch and move about. For premium passengers, a spiral staircase led up to an exclusive 16-seat upper-deck lounge, furnished with low-profile sofas and a staffed bar. This space turned a long flight over the Atlantic into a social event. Beyond carrying passengers, the 747 established a grand new standard for crossing oceans. The true impact of the 747 lay in its cold, hard economics. With a capacity of up to 400 passengers, the giant airliner slashed seat mile costs by roughly 30% compared to the older Boeing 707. By reducing the cost to carry one passenger 1 mile down to approximately 8 cents. Airlines could drop ticket prices and still turn a profit. This efficiency opened international flying to millions of middle-class travelers, triggering a massive wave of global tourism. But this sudden leap in scale threatened to choke the world's aviation infrastructure. Airports designed for the modest dimensions of early narrow-body jets had to reinvent themselves. Runways were widened, passenger terminals were redesigned, and larger gates were built to handle the sheer volume of travelers boarding a single flight. Ground crews required entirely new fleets of heavy-duty tugs, dual-lane jet bridges, and high-capacity baggage handling systems simply to process the immense loads. The aircraft did not just adapt to the aviation industry, it forced the world to rebuild around it. The original 747-100 proved that a twin-aisle giant could fly, but airlines quickly demanded more heavy-lifting capability. In 1971, Boeing delivered the 747-200, introducing more powerful Pratt & Whitney engines and a strengthened airframe to carry heavier payloads across oceans. When airlines needed to fly ultra-long distances without stopping, Boeing shortened the fuselage by 47 feet to create the 747 SP, saving enough weight to connect cities like New York and Tokyo nonstop. For high-density routes where passenger volume was the main priority, the 1983 747-300 stretched the upper deck by 23 feet, adding space for dozens of extra seats. The aircraft reached its peak in 1989 with the 747-400. This version replaced the 3-person cockpit with a 2-pilot digital flight deck, eliminating the flight engineer. Fitted with 6-foot winglets and more efficient engines, the 747-400 became the ultimate long-haul workhorse. Decades later, Boeing attempted one final modernization. The 747-8 lengthened the fuselage and adopted engine technology from the 787, offering a final update for a market that was already moving towards smaller, twin-engine designs. Global airlines quickly turned the 747 into their ultimate flagship. From British Airways and Lufthansa to Japan Airlines and Singapore Airlines, carrying the iconic hump became a statement of prestige on the world's densest intercontinental routes. Yet the aircraft was equally revolutionary when stripped of its premium lounges. Designed from day one for freight, freighter variants featured a hinged nose door that opened up the massive fuselage to swallow outsized cargo, machinery, and vehicles. Cargo giants like Atlas Air, Cargolux, and UPS turned these nose loaders into the backbone of global commerce. Outside of commerce, the jet assumed state significance. Modified 747-200Bs became Air Force One, a flying command post for the American presidency, while NASA used converted passenger airframes to carry the space shuttle on its back, lifting the heaviest achievements of human engineering. A quiet commercial shift eventually eclipsed the passenger jet. During the 1990s and the 2000s, fuel-saving twin-engine wide-bodies like the Boeing 777, the Boeing 787, the Airbus A330, and the Airbus A350 entered the market. Extended-range twin-engine operational standards, known as ETOPS, allowed these newer aircraft to fly the same transoceanic routes as the 747. Operating 2 engines instead of 4 lowered fuel bills and cut maintenance expenses in half. Airlines also shifted from hub-to-hub routes to direct point-to-point flights, reducing the need for ultra-large jets. The 747 remained highly capable, but the economic world changed around it. Boeing ended production in 2020, delivering the final freighter in January 2023. Emotional farewell flights and final scheduled passenger services marked the passing of an era. The Queen of the Skies stepped aside, leaving a world she had permanently altered. Today, efficient twin jets rule the upper atmosphere. Yet every time we board a seamless long-haul flight, we inhabit a world this aircraft built. The era of the giant has passed, but our connected horizon remains her monument. Share your memories of this legend in the comments.